Data for Future, episode 16. If you ever fancied about the idea of becoming a data scientist, to go into the data world, however, fear that you don't have enough knowledge background related to math, statistics, or data, or computer science. If you ever fancied about traveling around the world, living a digital nomad lifestyle while making a decent living and contributing to the world, this is the episode for you. Today, we are very lucky to have Edgar Rootalu here, who is currently a data scientist and co-founder of the data AI consultancy BriefTech, which helps startups, medium-sized enterprises, and nonprofits to achieve impact through using data and AI technology. Not only Edgar is a self-taught data scientist, he also traveled around Central and South America, Africa, and Europe, leading a life as a data analyst. So today, let's dive into the conversation and figure out what is his secret and how we can achieve similar paths for ourselves. Without further ado, let's welcome Edgar. There we go. So to kick off the conversation, why don't you introduce us a bit about how did data science caught your attention? How did you decide to start?
Right. As like every graduate, at one point they need to find a job, right? And my degree is very broad. I studied liberal arts and sciences in the University of Amsterdam. And that essentially meant that you can study anything, right? You can study economics, psychology, law, math, statistics, anything you desire. So I had a bit of an economics focus. But then at some point, the fear struck me that like, oh my God, I'm graduating. What am I gonna do with my life? Where am I gonna end up? Do I have to get a cubicle? Do I have to intern for free? All these fears? And at some point, I was led to a platform called Upwork, which is essentially a freelancing outsourcing platform. And having done a couple of statistics courses, I thought that maybe there's someone out there who would like some linear regression run on them, on their data or anything like that. So kind of a naive thought. And there turned out to be a sports coach who was practicing different training methods on their team. And he that I have these different training methods. Here's a data set. Can you please analyze that? And I was working for an extremely low hourly salary, but then as a student, that already felt great because it was double of what I had earned in a cafe, and then essentially one thing led to another. Found another contract job and which had something to do with web scraping and analysis, and understanding how different. It was for a private school company, so they wanted to understand which neighborhoods they should set up their school in. So then it was my task to get all the data about different neighborhoods and the housing prices there, make dashboards, and then essentially give an analysis on which neighborhoods would be good to establish. And then I decided that okay, so now I got my 2 or 3 contracts, and it was a dark November in Europe. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna buy a flight ticket to Dominican Republic and learn surfing. So then I did that and got some more contract jobs, continuously doing online courses. You take a project, you do courses, you take another project, you do more courses, you read books, you work really hard. But then the combination of all of those things then eventually enabled that I could then learn surfing in the morning, work in the afternoon, and then do courses on top of that in the evening to keep on growing. So continuously feeling a little bit imposter, but then also at the same time delivering results, etc. Which then eventually led me to an actual data science job at a tourism company based in Berlin. And there the task was then to it's Ventura Travel, and there the task was to build up then essentially the entire data ecosystem, from forecasting models to dashboards to KPIs, everything related to that.
Wow, that's a lot of information pouring at the same time, but super fascinating. So I have so many questions piling up as well. To start off, when you first initiated a career, you mentioned you started a contract with the Upwork. So in our previous episode, we also talk about imagine a future of jobs when we are thinking mostly people will be location independent. Well, we also talk about the website, about artwork, and among other contracting platforms. However, it doesn't seem to be as easy to, especially the market is getting more crowded today. How did you highlight your profile and to be picked out there? Do you think the timing you had the luck to enter when it's not as crowded, or is there some tricks and secrets for that?
Right. Definitely the crucial aspect is to keep a strong work ethic. When you talk to a client, the client expects a delivery, so you have to do anything to deliver. And at early stages of the career, that might also require working over hours, because you just need to learn on the job and you need to go through the mistakes, etc. So working hard is definitely the key there. Also, in terms of getting contracts and getting jobs, it's also a numbers game. It's a lot contacting a lot of people who would be interested in your services, applying for multiple places. But then also knowing your value, right, and testing your value. Test what you can offer, how you can offer it, what are the different methods of marketing yourself, etc., etc. So it's a lot testing, a lot of trial and error, etc.
Okay. But you said it's a lot of testing and trial and error. But did you have a team when you work with the companies? Because if you're always freelancing and contracting, I know for data science, companies do have a team of data scientists, engineers, analysts. How did you go about that?
Yeah, the internal teams are a great resource to learn more, right? They have processes in place. They have certain tech stacks in place. So as soon as you see that they're using certain types of libraries or certain types of technologies, then instantly go and look those up, learn, practice, make your own little demo, etc. So those are very important. My career then eventually led me to build my own company, bravetech.io, which offers then data science and analytics services to small and medium-sized startups, startup mentoring, but also nonprofits. And our focus is often to help companies whose analysts or data scientists are very busy, and the internal demand in every company for data intense work is really, really big. And the analysts' backlogs are usually years, decades long. And so then we often come in at the point where, let's say, a marketing team doesn't have resource to develop like custom user models or custom analysis. So then we can come in and build up the data infrastructure for that. And that company might as well have their own data scientists and analysts and product analysts and all these pipelines ready. But then there's so much intelligence to be gathered that there's always extra work. So that's where I often come in to help out when their own people are already very busy.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Making good use of what is internal the company is it's also a great way to learn, but also a really great way to contribute. And I appreciate when you said you were learning, like having this phase of having a little bit imposter syndrome and then running your way to keep up. And I definitely couldn't agree more. That's a good way to challenge yourself. You mentioned before you were touching different projects that focus on different areas of data science, right? From the regression models to the optimization to choose location. And in terms of the marketing, it seems that your focus is very spread. And as a data scientist, I don't know too many data scientists, but I don't know if people develop more into a niche area or they're more like what you are. They know a bit of everything. How's it like?
Right. I started off being very focused on user data and analyzing how users behave, how to collect information about users, how to then build user models. Eventually, I've developed into a role of, okay, here is an interesting problem or interesting situation. What kind of team or what kind of setup do we need to solve that problem? And so then, for example, started working with the Future Society on combating modern slavery with artificial intelligence. And there, what we saw was that there's tens of thousands of modern slavery reports published by companies, immense amounts of text data. So we need to build the competencies and the skills required to then analyze and process through a lot of text data. So we built the team based on that and based on bringing on some competence and expertise on cloud technologies and APIs, etc. Because most of modern machine learning products are much easier to develop today than they were, let's say, a couple of years ago. Because let's say if you want to use OCR, you don't have to develop your OCR solution from scratch, but you can use an API from Amazon or Google, etc. So you can then focus on something more valuable. So getting your AI product out there is actually much easier and increasingly easier. NLP, natural language processing, is becoming increasingly more accessible thanks to communities like Hugging Face, who then just combine all the massive knowledge that is being generated by natural language research and make them into very simple, usable API interfaces, which you can hook up into your application. And I believe that it's probably also just generally underrepresented of how little modeling work actually goes into making a data product. There is before you can model, you need to collect the data, clean the data, organize it, set up your pipelines, make tests, and then you have to think of like how the users use your solution, how they user testing, user requirements, design, UX, all of these aspects. Doing the actual modeling in an AI product is incredibly small part of the process.
Yeah. No, couldn't agree more. I'm currently working with an e-commerce company, and I think you have this experience before when you were the first data delegation in the company, and you have to do a little bit of everything. Well, you know, for this specific problem, we need to use model ABC. It's a click of a button, but having the data cleaned up and ready, it's forever. It's gonna take forever. So with that being said, I also really like your perspective that nowadays all the models are packaged ready for us to use. Everything is on the table and is free. Everything is open source. It's awesome. But meanwhile, we are also facing the problem where we have too much choice. Like for a simple time series analysis, we can do the regular regression. We can do a little bit better using the package from Facebook, or we can go deeper with long short-term memory. How do you choose between all the options we have nowadays?
Yeah, in the real world, you have various constraints. You have time constraints and resource constraints, and also capability constraints, skills constraints, etc. So then the choice, in a way, becomes a little bit easier, because if you know that you only have a day to accomplish something, then you need to choose the tool that would get you there the quickest. Do you have time to train your own neural network, your own embeddings, etc.? Or do you then use some low-hanging fruits, tools that are already available in the public? And my philosophy is always to exhaust everything that is already out there before trying to hack on something new. And these hacks are of course important, and they're important for learning and for both your organization and yourself, and it enables you to really deeply understand what's going on underneath the packages. But then when developing real life solutions, then the constraints really come to play. So the resources should be exhausted.
Okay. I like that. I've had this advice given to me before, not only for machine learning data concept, but if there's a solution, use it. If someone has worked to package the solution for you, use it rather than developing everything from scratch, from zero. I think we touched upon data models, but I also want to learn more about your experience when you work to set up the data, be the first data scientist of the company. How was that experience like? How did you come about learning, and what problems you had? What are some good advices you have?
So, we should definitely admit that doing data work is not new in a sense, right? The data scientist title might be new, but there's been people in every company who's been collecting and analyzing data for ever since companies existed. So when you then, but there's a range of new tooling out there, and a range of resources that are often not used. When I landed in the tourism enterprise, then, for example, they were doing, or still are doing, lots of different travel products with different demand curves and seasonality, etc. And they had to then predict on how many travelers are there going to be on any product at any given point in time. And there were then people in different departments who were interested in this information. The marketeers were interested in that information, so they had something set their own spreadsheets. The operations people had their own spreadsheets. The CEO had his own spreadsheet and vision, etc. So I guess then when I entered the company, then the first task was to understand what is each stakeholder's interest in the question. What have they already built and developed? And then how can all of these different pieces of information integrated and unify to create one source of truth. So you start from creating the one source of truth for information, and then asking questions from the stakeholders in how they would use the data and how they would like to react on that, because then based on that, then you can develop the data product further. So it often starts from a chaotic mess, which just needs to be first standardized into a solid format that anyone can access and everyone in the company would have clarity. And after that, some further analysis can be done.
Okay. Couldn't agree more. The data silo problem always very true, very real. And then I appreciate when you mentioned we need to get to know each stakeholder, what is really motivating them, right? To make them collaborate with each other. And that is a lengthy process. What I'm curious about is how long did it take you to go through that? And even with your company nowadays, if you're working with some startups or mid-sized enterprise with nonprofits, how long is usually the time spent for each project?
Yes, it very much depends on how much thinking they have done upfront, because sometimes it's through different types of trial and error, it's taken a year or two to figure out what they actually need.
Yeah.
Whereas in other places, they have a very clear idea of what's needed to be done. So then your task is basically just to execute and automate, and then process it, and then it would take much quicker. So the key point really is to do the thinking, the thinking on what we need, where we're going, what resources do we have, what else do we need to collect, how does this fit into this business strategy, and then what's then the true benefit that, let's say, our employees would get by developing a particular type of data solution.
Okay. So it's actually quite like 1 or 2 year experience for any project for company transitioning into AI and data-driven culture, right? That's really good to know, because for my work currently, every day I want to try to make some change, but the reality and what you dream about it just really don't match. You couldn't achieve the speed you want to go into. And so when you were doing contracting work while you were traveling all the time, were they also very long projects?
And that is definitely a challenge when moving around a lot, meeting client requirements. So discipline and work mentality is incredibly important. That you would have, your work location. Where do you get work done? Like every place that you arrive to, that you have a specific, I don't know, either a specific desk or some type of routine. All of that is very important. Traveling around a lot does make it complicated to then deliver. But then that means that you have to also be more careful in planning things out, planning your meetings, planning your deliveries, planning your own work, cutting your work into manageable chunks. All of that is absolutely necessary when is absolutely necessary in any type of work, but especially when you also want to live a good lifestyle next to it, and it's definitely possible and doable, and highly enjoyable as well, because why work to live when you can why live to work when you can work to live?
Yeah, sure.
And because there is so much to experience and explore that but then also getting the work done is important. So it's you have to be very careful in how you organize that.
Yeah. Well, something I see from you is that not only you manage to travel and explore around, but meanwhile you also have the community you're involved with. Like you're involved with the Future Society, and the other is the TopDo organization, which is quite exclusive. They only accept 3% of all the applicants. So how do you go about moving around everywhere but finding your community, finding your resource and a group of people to go to?
When I moved, so I'm originally from Estonia, and I moved away from there when I was about 18. And at that point, I was a bit worried that I'm going to give up my network, I'm not going to be rooted enough, and not connected enough to succeed. And over the years, I've learned that it's actually quite a global community. There are you meet similar people in similar events in different parts of the world. I think a great example of that is, for example, the Ethereum community as well, who organize hackathons, which are extremely interesting events, because the Ethereum Foundation then provides for the hackathons, and they take place everywhere from London to Cape Town to San Diego to Singapore. And often you meet similar people in different parts of the world who work on similar tasks, and then you meet somebody from that hackathon in another meetup, let's say here in Barcelona, and it's so you begin to learn that there is something more to human connection than just being in the same place, same geographical location together. So I guess it's important to know your mission. What are you really working for? And once you know that, then in almost every part of the world that you go to, you are going to find the people who are on the same mission and work with them, and who are then going to enable you to move to a new place. And I when I learned that, then that kind of made me go at ease. It's like, okay, no, I don't have to be worried about where I am or that I am placed in a given geographical location, but that I'm going to live where I would like to live. Also, I'm able to do that because I'm incredibly lucky and I'm born in this part of the world. So obviously that plays part of that. But it is possible then to find the people and your fellows who you're on the mission and on the road together.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. But how more specifically do you find them? Is there any platform, community? How did you discover about the Future Society or the Topical?
It's very difficult to draw a one specific narrative. Mm-hmm. So different events lead to different other events. So, for example, I got to know the Future Society through a co-working space in Barcelona called Beta House, which brings together a lot of freelancers and independent contractors. Exactly. And there I met Yolanda, who is a leading researcher in the Future Society. And then we started discussing the impact of AI in the world and lots of research that the Future Society is doing in this area. Which eventually led us to discuss a project centered around the modern slavery, because the Future Society also has a large network of advisors and foundations, etc. So we started discussing that, and eventually came up with a project plan, and that led to this project. I got engaged with TopTal purely by finding the program online, essentially. Because TopTal is also it's a large network of different engineers and data professionals, and I found the network, and that seemed quite interesting. Applied, got accepted, and that has led to a whole range of new different jobs and tasks and contracts and clients and etc. So. Also, for example, organizing events, bringing if you land in a new place, then organizing some small events yourself will bring people together. Going out, finding out what's already happening in the city, talking to people, all of these things will lead to different leads. So I guess you just really have to be outgoing and active and searching and interacting. So and then things will happen that you didn't think will happen, and sometimes the things that you wanted to happen will never happen, and just how life works.
Yeah. Sure. That's how we get to know you as well. We met in the meetup for AI for Good. I know you're very into blockchain as well. Why don't we dive a little bit into some connection between data and blockchain, and why are you fascinated by this new technology? What do you see the potential it is in terms of impact and sustainability?
A lot of the data field is not a lot. Everything about data is digital. Data is digital, at least in today's world. Data exchange is bits and bytes changing across servers. Information transmits over circuits, etc. Now, what blockchain is bringing to the table is facilitating all sorts of transactions in the digital space. It's able to automate lots of transactions. So, for example, we have an interesting problem in today's world, which is related to data access. And, for example, if you do medical research, then you can't share data because there's all sorts of confidentiality issues. There are lots of policies in place that just don't allow you to share information. What blockchain allows is essentially sharing of data in an encrypted manner, such that all the key pieces of information stay anonymous, while you can still share the core or the structure of the information across different institutes. So you can create, for example, data marketplaces, which the Ocean Protocol is, for example, doing. And the Ocean Protocol essentially allows you to build a data marketplace for any purposes, whether it's then for medical data sharing or autonomous vehicle data sharing or buying and selling autonomous vehicle data. They have also released a data commons, so just publicly available data. So that's, for example, one way I see blockchains are having an impact to the data landscape. Also, for example, there's another platform called Numerai, and Numerai is a predictions platform where they provide the data. The platform or the central unit provides the data, and then it invites all sorts of data scientists to then build their models and stake their models, put your money where your mouth is, essentially, and then combine all of these models into a meta model and use that then in real life. So, for example, Numera is doing this in financial markets, but this is they've generalized the platform that essentially any type of information that you would like to aggregate in the world in a confident and secure manner, you can do that through the Numera second, or like the new protocol, which is called Erasure. So it allows you to really pool information in an autonomous and secure way without like really relying on any central unit. And I believe that's going to have an impact in the development of AI, because it then allows different AIs to interact with each other, different algorithms to combine each other's information, build meta algorithms, and all of the transactions between them are then facilitated by the protocol or by blockchain. Yeah.
So the aspect of decentralization, the security, even though we are not experts on blockchain, is definitely an area very essential for where data is developing into down the road. So very fascinating. After this really inspiring conversation, I encourage you to check out Ocean Protocol or Numera if you're interested. But let's come back to you. Now, I know after all this data scientist, digital nomad experience, you are more or less settled in Barcelona. Tell us a bit about what you are dedicating into, maybe more about your company to wrap up the conversation.
Yes. So at the moment, then, I'm focused on building Brave Tech, which is a data science and analytics consultancy, and that helps companies to make an impact with data. And that is then really around collecting data, analyzing, building up analytical methods, building dashboards, implementing machine learning algorithms, bringing together different cloud services, and just generally making data useful for the stakeholders, for your team members, or for the general public. So before we wrap up, I'd also like to then invite everyone to participate in the modern slavery research, because what we are also planning to do is to make a public GitHub where we provide instructions on how anyone can access modern slavery data, modern slavery statements data. It's a massive text corpus of tens of thousands of modern slavery statements. And that way anyone can start experimenting with it. It's a new text corpus that hasn't really been used in the machine learning or machine learning research space, and it allows anyone to try out the newest algorithms and embeddings, etc., by then contributing to the research and hopefully helping everyone, or helping us to reduce human trafficking and any types of bondage and forced labor in the world by keeping the companies accountable.
Mm-hmm. Super, very meaningful project, and this good opportunity for anyone who want to dive deeper and learning by doing. So question from the audience would be, where we see the future of merging data and sustainability together. How did you come here, and where is it going?
Yeah, I believe there's a huge potential in using data and algorithms to achieve a more sustainable future. There's a range of very exciting projects out there. where people are listening to rainforest sounds to, for example, recognize a chainsaw sounds, so to send alarms to conservationists on the ground, so that to reduce deforestation, etc. And I believe that us as data professionals, we should then really pay close attention to where our what are the consequences of our work? Because as an engineer, it's very exciting to hack on some exciting solution just because you can. But that solution is going to end up somewhere, and then you might eventually create something like Facebook, which is just a vast collection of incredibly talented and smart people. But now they've created this conglomerate that almost nobody can control and steer anywhere. So, and there's huge amount of free data sources out there, both by AWS or by Google, which collect lots of information about sustainable development goals, about what countries are doing in those terms, and using those data sources, I think there's lots of potential in creating sustainable applications, and applications that would eventually also help us preserve the environment, create stable labor conditions, etc. I got to this space through personal exploration, through connections, through the network, through looking at interesting projects to do, and then actively saying no to projects in gambling and loans and etc. Because there's a lot of money to be made there, and a lot of technologically exciting projects in there. But the impact that our solutions create really is significant, and we have to be very looking out for that.
Okay. Well, super interesting. Thanks for sharing with us, Edgar. We are ending. What's the best way for people to find you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, write me an email, edgar@bravetech.io. I'm also on Twitter, which is Edgar Rootalu, or find me on LinkedIn, or go to bravetech.io and find my contacts there.
Super. We'll have all those in the show notes for you to get in touch. That wraps our episode for the day. And thank you for listening. And thank you, Edgar, for joining. So that wraps our episode for today. Did you like it? Share your thoughts and comments with us in the Typeform link below. We would really appreciate any engagement from you to help us to develop better. Meanwhile, if you really liked our production, feel free to support us with our Patreon page, which is linked in this video and in our short note. Data for Future, we see you next episode.